Hey, what's going on guys, Khraze here and welcome back to another Outriders video. Today let's take a look at all of the 10 legendary weapons that you can probably or not get right now in the free demo, or well, you will get these probably in the full game, but in this video I want to break these down for you guys, kind of show you what they do, what they are all about, and which ones are the ones that I found to be the best as well as the not so great. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. By the way, I also want to announce our lucky winner for the February giveaway, Dragon Zen SKA, that won a free copy of Cyberpunk 2077. So congratulations. Now if you didn't win any of these giveaways, don't worry, I'm going to do these every single month. And as a matter of fact, if you're interested in Outriders right now, there's a different giveaway that I'm also doing, so you can follow all of that in the links down below. Let's begin with likely my favorite weapon right now in the game, which is the Thunderbird, the legendary assault rifle. Now this comes with two very awesome mods on it. The tier 3 one is called Ultimate Storm, and what this does is that it makes all of your shots to also deal lightning on top of that, as well as 40 damage in an area. So basically every single time you shoot an enemy, it's gonna get zapped by lightning and it deals a buttload of damage. The second one is called Striga, and it makes 30% of all of your critical damage to be returned as health instead. So essentially, if you combine these two perks, not only do you deal really high damage, it's really amazing against armored enemies like the big brutes and whatnot, but you're also getting that heal at the same time, which makes it like one of the best weapons right now in the game to have. And it also looks spectacular. I mean, it comes with those really awesome lightning effects, so what is not to love about this weapon? The second one is called the Emperor's Vault. It might not be as flashy as the first one, but it's equally or maybe even more powerful than that, thanks to one of its perks called Killing Spree. So this tier 3 mod right here, what it does is that when you kill an enemy, it gives you a damage buff of 30% that will last up to 30 seconds, and get this, you can also stack it up to 5 times, essentially increasing your weapon damage by 150% with just 5 enemy kills, which makes it really incredible even if you combine it with its other perk called Brain Eater. So now your critical shots do not consume ammo anymore. So between these and the fact that it already comes with a really big clip size of 60 by default, you can essentially deal super high damage, and because you're dealing super high damage, you also don't consume as much ammo, and you can keep going on until pretty much everybody on the battlefield has been wiped out. The third one is a pretty interesting shotgun called the AERIE Master. This is going to be a legendary pump action shotgun that comes with two very awesome effects on it. The tier 3 one is called Weightlessness, so this makes your shots to inflict a time rift type of effect that lifts enemies in the air for a few seconds, making them pretty much immobilized right there. The second one is going to be called the Critical Point. It increases the chance of scoring critical shots against enemies by 15%. But that weightlessness perk right there is really powerful. It also works against boss enemies, so you can literally lift the boss in the air and he's just gonna be a sitting duck waiting to get a pump action shotgun to the face. Furthermore, if you stack multiple enemies in a really small area, if you just shoot once, your entire pallet spread can actually affect multiple enemies at the same time. So if you like shoot against a group of enemies with one shot, you literally can lift like 3, 4, maybe even 5 enemies at the same time in the air with only this weapon. This brings us to the fourth weapon on the list, and another pump action shotgun, and this is gonna be called the GOLEM'S limb. So this comes with two really interesting mods on it. One of them is called Golem Rising, so when you kill an enemy with this weapon, it gives you a golem ability for 3 seconds. I will explain that in just a little bit. And then there's also the vampire perk. Killing shots grant 15% skill leech boost for up to 20 seconds. So this is the perfect weapon right now for a pyromancer, especially if you find it a bit too squishy. Essentially, if you kill an enemy with this weapon, you're going to gain that golem ability that kind of engulfs your character into like this rock looking armor that protects you against a ton of incoming damage, and it's basically even better than the on-demand skill that the Devastator has that does pretty much the exact same thing. So this is amazing. By the way, there's no cooldown on the Golem Rising, so as long as you're killing enemies, you're constantly going to refresh that armor and you're constantly going to see it on your character. It's also helpful because you have the Vampire perk to heal even more, which is going to be very beneficial for something like a Pyromancer, but it can work really well for a Technomancer as well. So really amazing, and it also looks like completely out of this world. But speaking of weapons that seem out of this world, let's take a look at Grim Marrow, a legendary light machine gun. Now this isn't as powerful as I thought it would, but it does come with a really interesting tier 2 mod right there called Improved Stiffening. So yeah, this makes your shots to inflict a slow type effect against the enemies with a 4-second cooldown, essentially turning you into kind of like a trickster that can slow down enemies in time. Now the second one is going to be called the Singularity, and it makes your killing shots to create an anomaly bubble that bursts for about 399 damage, or you can shoot it to make it burst even faster. The only problem that I noticed with this weapon is that Singularity doesn't seem to spawn too often, like every 10 to 15 enemies is when it pops up, so I kind of wish that this was a bit fine-tuned so that it spawns a bit more often, because right now it feels a little bit too underpowered because of that. The sixth weapon on the list is going to be the legendary rifle called RAROG'S Gaze. The two mods on it are as follows. So we have Weakness Trap that makes it so that when you shoot an enemy, that shot can cause an explosion that will deal 40 damage, as well as inflicting a weakness debuff onto all of the enemies in a 5-meter radius. So a super useful perk right there. But then there's also the Burning Bullets mod that causes your shots to inflict a burn debuff onto the enemies on an 8-second cooldown. Now what makes this weapon so powerful right now, especially on a trickster, is the fact that it comes with a 250% critical damage multiplier. So what this means is that if you also couple it with the fourth ability of the trickster that buffs up your bullet damage, you can essentially melt a boss in like half of a magazine. Pretty much that. 3-4 shots at a maximum in the head into any boss right now in World Tier 5 is going to absolutely melt that boss, and pretty much everything else around it is going to die in one shot, no matter if it's a body or to the head. So really one of the best weapons right now to have. But we talked about primary weapons, let's also talk about secondary ones, and the only one that I was able to actually find is called, well, Torment and Agony. It's, well, in theory 2 weapons, but it's only one equipable item. This is going to be a legendary pistols that comes with 2 mods again. The first mod is going to be called Judgment Enforcer. This makes it so that when you shoot an enemy with this weapon, you will mark them so that when you reload your weapon, you're going to deal 5 times that weapon damage onto the enemy that is marked. And by the way, this mark is going to be removed if you change to a different weapon. There's also the Clip Combustion, so that when you reload your weapon, be it like 1 bullet or the full magazine, you're going to cause this shockwave in about like 5-meter radius for about 22 damage. But what makes this weapon so incredible is that you can literally mark an enemy with like a bunch of bullets, then reload, and it's gonna deal like 5 times the amount of the weapon damage on said enemy. You can even go a step forward and like tap enemies with bullets, like a couple of bullets in multiple enemies, reload, and that's gonna cause all of them to explode at the very same time. So you can combine these 2 perks, like get close to the enemy, tap them with the first mod, and then reload, and it's both going to make them explode and make your character to do that shockwave for additional damage, essentially melting almost anything. Moving on to the 8th spot, we have the legendary assault rifle called VOODOO Matchmaker, and it comes with the following 2 perks. The first one, tier 3, is called Ultimate Damage Link, and it makes it so that your shots will link up to 2 enemies together so that they will share up to 30% of their weapon damage dealt and 10% of their anomaly damage dealt. So essentially they will both get damage at the very same time as they deal damage themselves, from what I'm noticing right here, but I'm not really sure if that is the actual function in game, because it seems that it's going to share your damage that you deal onto them between these 2 targets. I might be wrong on this one, I still need to do more testing. The only thing you need to know is that this is a great AoE weapon to link 2 targets together and deal heal and share damage between them. The other one is called vulnerability bullets, and what it does is that it just inflicts vulnerability debuff on enemies on an 8-second cooldown when you shoot them. This brings us to the number 9 weapon on the list, the Migraine, and I'm not gonna lie, I did get some migraines trying to get this work and trying to see how this actually works. So here it is. It comes with a tier 3 perk called Ultimate Bleeding, so all of your shots will cause bleeding onto the enemies for an additional damage over time, but then it also has a bomb ahead perk that makes it so that killing shots turn enemies into an anomaly bomb, and they will deal 133 damage on a 3-second cooldown. So there's gonna be like this small circular explosion, very similar to the other weapon that we covered previously. Now the only thing about this is that, just like in the case of the MARROW weapon, this also doesn't spawn too often. Like, that anomaly explosion for some reason spawns very rarely. You kind of need to kill at least 15 or maybe 20 enemies with this weapon before you even see one of those popping, so maybe they could use a bit of fine-tuning, as I said. The final one is going to be called the ICEBERG Legendary Bolt Action Rifle. It's pretty much self-explanatory. As you might have guessed, it freezes enemies and it freezes enemies. So the Winter's Blast mod makes your critical shots to create an ice blast that inflicts a freeze debuff onto all of the enemies around that target in a 4-meter radius, essentially freezing everybody in place. And then with the Icebreaker, if you also kill that frozen target, it's going to cause a frozen explosion that's going to deal about 199 damage in a pretty big radius. But you will need pretty high critical chance in order to make better use of this, which probably at a lower level and with bad gear you're not going to have too much of. So this is likely going to be the type of weapon that will shine somewhere in the end game, maybe on the Technomancer. I think that this is going to be best on the Technomancer because it also has access to a ton of other freezes too. But this is it with the 10 current legendary weapons right now in the game that we were able to find. Now, if I missed any of them, or if you managed to find a different one that I did not cover, let me know in the comment section down below. In the meantime, also tell me which one of these is your favorite and which one of these did you manage to get in the free demo. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.